Hello, good morning. I've got some waving going on, so that's a good sign. How are you guys doing this morning?
Got a big group.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for our fourth episode of Book and Cook. Today we're making a winter squash pasta. We've got all our friends from the library here, of course, and if you guys haven't been on the live, I'm Maria with Urban Seeds, and today we have a lot of steps today because as Book and Cook goes later in the program, we do make things a little bit more complicated and complex. And so there's going to be a few more steps. We're going to all work on navigating that together. Do you guys all have parents helping you out today? Who's cooking the dish live with me today?
Looking at live.
We've got some hands up. Awesome. I know some people kind of join in and maybe cook later. As we get started, I am heating up my pasta water, and I actually need to add some salt to it. And I left it over there, but I'm gonna have my helper come bring me some, as well as the pepper that we're gonna use later. We have a lot of different ingredients today. It's a little bit later in the recipe, but as you heat up your water, I'm just gonna add a good generous portion of salt. I think the recipe says salty like the sea. So my water is gonna start hopefully boiling in a second here. And really with pasta, it's all about timing and coordinating. And so we're gonna be cooking a few different elements of the pasta and then bringing it all together. So we are gonna get started, I think, with the squash. And everyone should have gotten squash already cooked. I know I also sent along a raw squash for you. But I think let's start with the squash, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today. See, everyone's getting that out. This is a delicata type of squash. It's called a jester squash. And first of all, I want to ask if anyone eats squash already and if they know what kind of squash they've eaten before. Does anyone want to unmute and tell me if they've tried squash? And we're already getting some thumbs down today. But once again, I hope you guys are open to trying the recipe because it's not always about the exact type of squash you've tried before, but this is going to be a new way today, and I do hope you'll try this new way that we prepare today. So, is anyone familiar with this squash or a different type?
Oh, you want to talk about acorn squash?
Acorn squash.
Acorn squash. Yeah, this is actually very similar to an acorn squash. This recipe, as acorn squash continues to become available this fall, you can use acorn squash for this recipe too.
We've used butternut and spaghetti.
Butternut and spaghetti squash. Awesome. Yeah, we're gonna be working on some butternut squash maybe later this year. And we've been working with this farmer to grow us different squash for all our programs at Urban Seeds. And she grew a bunch of these wonderful regular delicata. But then this one we're using today is called Jester. And it's a little bit more bulbous and a little bit more starchy. Once again, similar to an acorn. I see a few of you holding your squash. I know a few have told me that this looks more like something at a pumpkin patch, but just know that a lot of those things are edible, even at a pumpkin patch, and pumpkins are edible. So, it does take a little bit more preparation. It is obviously pretty hard, and because it's a little bit harder and not as easy to cut with your little knives that we have you guys working with, we went ahead and roasted it for you. There's some squash in the frames, I like it. Okay, so we're gonna start by just taking our squash out and we're just gonna kind of get it prepped. So, we roasted this for you. I'm thinking we're just going to peel off the skin because it's kind of sat for just one day. So this might be where I'm gonna need a towel because we're gonna get hands in here, and it just came off really easily for me. So I peel off that skin, and we just roasted a few others here. I wanted to show you guys just what it looks like. This one we didn't put really much oil on. I just put oil on the pan. Sometimes you can oil up the whole squash, put olive oil on it and some seasoning, and that can just be a dish in itself, and a full, in a side dish or something like that. But here we're gonna kind of get it prepared so that we can group it in with the rest of the pasta. So I see you guys all working with it. I know these are kind of new funky textures. I'm just piecing it off bit by bit. I hope yours is coming off easily. Yours is probably just as cold as mine, so we'll wait to taste it until it's cooked. Of course, you could taste a little bit now, but it doesn't really have any seasoning on it. And really, most vegetables, in my opinion, they don't taste too good without seasoning, especially a little salt and pepper goes a long way, but we'll be adding a lot of different flavor components. I may need to get a little towel and start to create a little scrap bowl here. I always go hands in. You definitely could have used a spoon, but you know that I get everything pretty hands-on. Thank you, Kate. Kate's my assistant. You'll be seeing her coming in and out so that I don't have to get off camera with you guys. Squash is all peeled here. And I'm going to take a little first step and just use my knife to, I think, just cut it into some small chunks. So we're going to prepare this first. And you can kind of put it face down. So kind of the hollow side, you can put face down so that it's, a flat bottom. We always talk about a flat bottom whenever you're cooking. So I'm going to put that kind of the side that we cut down on the base. And then I'm just going to create some chunks. So I'm going to do some, lines, kind of just some medium chunks. So just a few lines all the way through, and then maybe 3 across, so that you start to get chunks that look more like, and it's a little squishy, so maybe like that size, if you can see. I don't know, I'll never know where this camera's at. There we go. And once you do that to both, I'm just going to put my squash pieces aside for a second while we prepare the other items. So once again, maybe like doing maybe 4 or 5 cuts.
Maria, I think Adeline has her hand raised.
Adeline, did you have a comment you wanted to make or a question?
Is it supposed to be this big?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good size. It's about kind of, if you want to make it smaller, it may be nice to have smaller parts in your pasta. Probably the squash is going to break apart a little bit when we combine everything. So you can definitely make them smaller. You kind of think about how you want people to experience it, not only yourself, but the rest of your family when they're eating it. Do you want big pieces of squash in your mouth with the pasta, or would you rather have like little pieces with each bite? So, texture and, size of items is always really important when you're cooking different things. Because it changes the way that it feels in your mouth, and it changes how many ingredients you can have on your fork. So I think most of you are wrapping up the squash prep. We're gonna get to this onion pretty soon. I'm still kind of checking on my water boiling over here. We're gonna try to cut everything for the rest of the dish in the beginning, because everything toward the end is gonna go pretty fast once we start cooking. I know we've done an onion before. We did one last class. Some of these onions aren't the most glamorous, I would say. They are from a local farm. And some of them just may need some extra, extra peeling to it. So I'll use this as my little garbage here. And if you're ready, I'm going to start working on my onions. Mine is, once again, it's a little dirty. And just like last time, you just got to peel it all the way back to the first layer. And I think that that's always important when you're working with like local fresh produce, is that sometimes you'll look at produce and it may not look the best, but a lot of it can still be used. So you just gotta keep working your way back. I may need to take off one more layer once we've cut it. These onions are from Ryman's Farm Stand. They're near Darmstadt. They have loads of onions on the farm. Onions can be a hard thing to store. So some of this is just due to the different storage. But yeah, my onion's looking pretty good. I might take one more layer off. And it might be easier to take off a layer once you've cut it a little bit. And I know we've talked about onions. You're usually going to start, by cutting off just that top. And, if a parent needs to help you with a bigger knife, some of these onions are very big and they can be hard with a paring knife. So maybe the first cuts a parent or guardian will have to make, but we're going to do the top and the bottom like we always do with our vegetables so that there's a flat bottom and it's much easier to cut into smaller pieces. So I'm gonna start by cutting in half. And we always talk about your hand placement, being very careful. It helps me to just put my hand kind of safely on each side and then do a big cut in the middle. And I'm going to take off one more layer of my onion just because there's some little bit of dirt on mine today. Sometimes I just wash that off, but since I'm gonna steer away from the sink. I'm just going to take off one more layer. Kind of wipe my hands down a little bit. And then we are going to do thin slices today. So you got your two halves. And we're going to try to do them as thin as you can. Once again, this is all about mouthfeel and just like how big you want different chunks in your mouth. They're like, I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing to say, but we're going to try to do really thin slices. And you'll find in different recipes that they use different cuts for different reasons. And like I said, it's all about kind of the size of items and how they work together. So I'm going to do my best to start doing some thin slices, keeping my one hand all the way over here. And you kind of go with this like downward motion. And if you can't do them as skinny, that's okay. Try your best here with getting them thin. I'm kind of shooting for about this size. Let's see if I can, I dropped it on him. I'm going to have a bloopers reel today. We're going to have oniony pasta water. There we go. Okay. Back to showing you these slices. So we're looking for like about that thickness, but like I said, it can be hard to get it that thin. If you want some smaller pieces, you can take your half and do another cut in the middle and then do some slicing. You guys all know by now that I'm a little flexible in your cutting, especially because you just got to play with what you're most comfortable with. And then usually once I get to one end of the onion and it starts to get closer to my fingers, I drop it down again to a flat surface and then do a few more slices. So we continue to kind of build on our cooking, our knife skills. I know we've already done onions a few times, so we're getting more comfortable. Learning how to cut an onion in different ways is like one of the most essential cooking skills. Like I said, I'll kind of go midway through, and then once it gets close to my fingers, I just drop it on its side and kind of do the same thing.
Some tears.
There's some tears going on.
Looks like.
Luckily, this one's not making me cry today, but sometimes when I'm cooking onions, my boyfriend at home, he comes to put sunglasses on me. It makes it a little bit darker, but it helps me not to cry so much. There are things called onion goggles, but I don't think I'm going to be wearing any of those on cameras for you guys. But if you want to look into the onion goggles and you just love to cook onions, that might be a possibility for you. How are we doing with the onion? They're busy at work. I can tell when they're busy, so then I pause. I see a lot of parents helping out today. I appreciate this. Of course, once again, we're using a lot of different things today. You're using a few, kind of a double burner situation here as well. And I know this one's a little bit tougher because it's not just, putting it in the oven and letting things cook, but, doing kind of a seasonal pasta is always nice to have. How to really play off one core, I would say core seasonal ingredient, although we do have a few today, seasonal and local ingredients we're working with. So as you guys are working through your onion, I am just peeling my garlic because we're gonna try to do all the cutting that we need to do right at the start.
Hey Maria, I think Adeline might have a question.
Adeline, do you have another question?
Where do we put the onions? In the large bowl?
So yeah, I'm actually just, using a little plate to put them on for a second. We're gonna get them going in the pan pretty soon. I'm kind of just using an extra surface to rest them on for a second to keep my cutting board clear. I know this may be one that's a little bit more dishes heavy for your parents or guardian. We're gonna have to do these dishes too. But yeah, just kind of try to find another spot to rest them on for a second. I'm gonna see if my pasta water needs to increase just so we can get that going and boiling. Most of my raw ingredients. I'm kind of using this little trash can here. Someone's got some purple vibes going on their video. All right, I think we're working on the garlic. And the garlic today is going to actually just only be for the breadcrumbs. So we're going to, you can cut off the little end of the garlic. We've cut garlic before too. It's harder to cut these smaller pieces. So I would just cut it into as many pieces as you can. I'm going to do smaller slices of the garlic, but you got to be really careful. So if this is something you want your parent or guardian to do, I'd bring them back over. I know some of you were using like mincers last time. Some of you have a handheld tool. I'm always going to do things with as little special equipment as possible. But you guys are welcome to mince the garlic with a press if that's preferred. That can always be easier. There's a lot of people who still use the presses. I'm going to try to just chop it best I can with the paring knife, but just continue to be careful. It's almost harder sometimes to work with smaller ingredients in the kitchen. How are you doing, Adeline?
Do we cut both garlics?
Yeah, so some of you, I think there's only one clove mentioned in the recipe, but if they were a little bit smaller, I included two. So I used two myself today. If you don't, I hope you like garlic, but if you don't like garlic as much, you can just use a little bit less. But this will kind of go in our zesty breadcrumbs that we're gonna make to top the pasta. This recipe really builds on different flavors. And it's a lot of kind of overall simple ingredients, but you build a lot of flavor with how it's prepared. So same thing with my garlic. I'm gonna kind of put it aside on a plate right now. Using a few different plates here, more than I think we have before. Really trying to get this pasta water boiling. I'm gonna keep turning that up. We got some time. And we still got more things to cut, so we're just gonna keep going. We always do a lot of chopping on the program. I think, is everyone kind of still working with their garlic, or do we want to move on to the kale? Thumbs up for kale. Oh, we're working. We got some thumbs up for kale. Okay. Awesome. So this kale is already pre-cut overall. But once again, if you don't, haven't tried kale and don't like greens as much, I would cut it a little smaller. So that piece doesn't look as good, so I'm gonna set that aside. And especially if you don't like some of these hardier parts, you can take out some of these stems that are maybe in this mix. I may take out a few of the large ones. They're a little bit, it's got a slightly different texture. They're gonna be kind of hard to kind of chew through. So I'm gonna take out those big ones. These kind of small ones that are more attached to the leaf, you can leave on. You know, it's kind of thin overall, that's gonna cook through. But these are just gonna be a little bit woodier, so I'm gonna take those out. I'm gonna put this all in my little scrap bowl. That's a technique that lots of chefs use, just having like a little.
I think it tastes like a bittery spinach.
A bittery spinach? Yeah, you're right. Kale is known as a more bitter green. You can eat it raw for sure. I'll eat some along with you. And it is kind of a taste you have to get used to. I didn't really like it much either, and then I kept cooking it in different ways, and I learned the ways that I like to eat it. So, you know, I didn't even think about it, but I just started kind of ripping it apart. So if you have some bigger pieces, I would just rip it into just slightly smaller pieces. Like I said, if I find something is easier with my hands, I'm gonna usually go that route. You can, you know, with greens, typically when you're cutting them, you kind of try to group it together and then make some like kind of large cuts like this. But I'm finding my hands to be the better route today. Then you can kind of target some of the bigger leaves. And you kind of want, you don't want like a huge piece of kale in your pasta. This will reduce down quite a bit, just like spinach or other greens. You know, this is actually probably not going to be very much when it's done cooking as far as the volume, but it's always nice to start with a good amount, and then it really cooks down and releases a lot of moisture within the vegetable. So the leaves start to get wilted. You'll see we're going to use some pasta water to make our sauce, and it'll help also wilt the kale down. So it'll be a little bit more manageable when you're eating it with pasta. Did anyone else try the kale raw? Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's not the best raw. I don't, you know, if you put like, there are kale salads where you can put like a really light dressing, and people actually massage the kale with like the oil or the vinegar dressing, and then it gets a little bit less bitter. It's kind of interesting. So
We have a little battle going on here. Some think it's good, some think it's bad.
yeah, I don't eat it raw either. I try to put it in different dishes. I was debating whether we should do spinach. What do you think? Should we have done spinach instead? No, yeah, there's some people who like spinach. I got it. Okay, we got all the kale in smaller pieces, I think. I'm gonna put that aside. Like I said, what we're doing here, I brought up this term before. I don't even know if I defined it as well last time, but what we're doing right now, putting all our ingredients and prepping them, is called mise en place. And that just means like everything is in its place. That's what that kind of means. You'll hear that more on cooking shows. Mise en place. And that's just kind of like, you know, if you've ever seen in a restaurant where they have all the ingredients already cut, and then they're able to kind of pull from them and make a dish really quickly. And I think we're on to maybe our last cuts, or just prep as far as using a knife, and that's going to be the sage. So you guys have the sage in your little flavor pack, and we've got some purple and green sage. This sage is from Darnell School Farm, and so is the squash we're using today, and she's in Posey County. And so I'm going to pick off some of my leaves. I picked all of them off the, you know, all off the stalk. I guess you call it a stalk. I'm not sure. I'll have to check on that as far as herbs, but I'm going to take some leaves off. Have you guys cooked with sage before? No?
No.
Thumbs down? Or do we have a thumbs down because you already don't like it, or you tried it? That's not really something I eat raw either. Or
Did before.
Tried it before? Never tried it before. Yeah, I don't think I had sage when I was your age either, but maybe in a dish and I didn't even know it. So, what do you think about how it smells? Can someone just try to describe it for me?
It smells almost like mint, but it's also a very soury smell.
I've never tried to describe it either, honestly. I almost think it smells floral to me. There's like a floral element to it. I don't think that that's a bad thing. Often sage all dishes. What else is primarily sage used in?
Stuffing. A lot of
Stuffing. That is a good point. Kelly at the library just reminded me that it's a key ingredient in stuffing. Do you guys like stuffing? Or dressing? I know that there's that's a hot debate. Do you guys eat stuffing at Thanksgiving, or is that not your thing? We got some back and forth. Some people make. We used to make the classic.
It's squishy.
The sage? Yeah. Okay. Well, we got a few pieces. I'm just gonna cut those kind of in thin strips. With herbs, you kind of try to bunch them all together, so it's just a little bit easier to cut. So you can almost make like a little bundle with your leaves. And then we will do some small slicing. This will all get cooked and incorporated, so it's okay if they're not the smallest pieces. I think my water's getting close here. I hope. I'm not as used to. I feel like it's on the verge here. We can't go over time. We gotta make this pasta in an hour. All right. I'm gonna do the same thing with my cut sage and put it aside. We're getting really close.
Noodles.
What? Y'all have a question?
Can we start on noodles?
And they start their noodles.
Yes, you can definitely start the noodles. Don't wait on me. You could probably cook a recipe by yourselves. Yeah, well, we're gonna get there. I should have started mine a little bit earlier. So if you're ready to go, you can definitely start your noodles. You know, in the ingredient, you know, if you get a little bit ahead of me, that's okay. And you can kind of cook the pasta all the way through, but just make sure that you keep about a cupful of the water. So I have mine. You can either use like a little Pyrex thing, glass container, a mug, just something that's more temperature resistant because you're gonna have hot pasta water, boiling pasta water. So I'm going to use this glass jar, and once I got my noodles going, I'm gonna make sure I reserve some of that pasta water. And the reason you reserve some of that is because it has the starch from the pasta. So you wanna take that water after your pasta is done cooking. Is everyone doing all right? I'm checking in. Okay, so we got our pasta going. I see Ian's just waiting for his next instruction. So you got your pasta going? Yeah, okay, awesome. I'm getting close. I'm just hoping to see a little bit more boiling action here in a second. And then we can get started on the sauce. Let me see.
How long does it take to cook the pasta?
It takes, that's a great question. I'm realizing I stole the instructions from you. It should take about 10 minutes. Like any good pasta, you want to try it, ideally. And you don't want it to overcook. So I would try it maybe even at about 8 minutes and see if the texture is right. If your water is, you know, at that ripping boil. I may transfer my pasta water. That's gonna be hard to transfer right now. Maybe in the back here so that we can get started on the on the sauce while the pasta gets ready, I am gonna do that really quick. If it works here, maybe not. This is where you pivot. Options here, maybe. Oh no, this is what I want to do. All right, we're gonna get this going because we don't need the pasta till the end. And we have some work to do on these onions, so I want to get that started. This is probably how I should have done the setup to start. There we go. That's all right. Cooking's all about improvising. Okay. So I'm gonna start heating up my other surface here so that we can start caramelizing these onions. And I've got a big old pan here. And we are gonna start heating that up. So I'm gonna put it on medium heat. And the first thing we're gonna do is, like I said, start caramelizing the onions. And I see some of you have kind of moved over to the stove. And if you want to get started, you guys have olive oil in a container. I am going to measure out my olive oil. So you guys, I did provide you with 4 tablespoons of olive oil. You're going to use about half of it for the onions. So the other half is going to be used for the breadcrumbs a little bit later. And I always like to provide olive oil. I just think that it is a slightly flavor than other oils, and especially in pastas, just works really well with the flavor combination.
Is this the olive oil?
Yes. Yeah, you should only have a few containers for this one, so yeah, that's the olive oil, and then we've got some goat cheese and some Parmesan. So yeah, like I said, you can use about half of it, and we're gonna start to get the onions going. So I'm gonna measure out about 2 tablespoons. You can also measure it out from what you've received, but usually when you're cooking pastas and things like that, you don't have to be super exact with the oil. But we're going to be adding some ingredients to this, so you are going to want enough to really break down the onions. Yeah.
Might help it boil fast.
You know, my crew here reminded me that if you put a lid on your pasta water, that usually it'll start boiling faster. And we're just using a burner today. I'm not quite used to these. So that's okay. So I'm gonna just coat my pan here. I feel it heating up. I think these just heat up. The smell is strange. These are just gonna start heating up. I am not, like I said, as used to this, but it's helpful to be able to show you guys because we don't really have, we need to get a kitchen one day that just has a nice 4-burner stove up here. And you can just start putting your onions in. It's okay if your pan's not quite heated up yet. Mine's getting there. Like I said, you guys might get through this pasta before I do. I'm gonna place my whole onion in there. And I'm gonna break that up. Mine's not hot, so I was a little bit more hands-on. And then I'm gonna put a little bit of salt in it. Just right off the bat. And I hope that gets working soon. I can feel the heat. Maybe. We're getting there, I think. All right, so I think I've also just forgotten like a spatula. which there's one right there. I know I have so many people here trying to help you with this dish today. Yeah, well, maybe like the like stainless steel ones. That'd be perfect. Yeah. We're getting there. This one is complex. So how are your onions smelling? Do you guys have those working already? Yeah, mine are working too. They're gonna get going, I think. Everything's heating up slow for me today. I should have been more prepared for that. This will take probably the longest time, just working through the onion. It takes about 12 to 15 minutes to kind of get them where you want. And then the rest of it's gonna get together pretty quickly, ideally. We're gonna have to get our noodles going so that we can finish this pasta. So let's see if we're getting there. How does it smell in your kitchens right now?
Thumbs up. Thumbs up.
Do you guys help make
Good.
pasta pretty regularly? What's your favorite type? We might need to talk about pasta for a while so that my stuff gets going over here. Oh, we got some. I think you can turn mics on. You can come talk to me for a little bit.
Well, I like spaghetti pasta, but I also like penne, which I think is what we're using.
Yeah.
Because or like swirly pasta because it like soaks up the sauce that we make.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think that this technique that we're using today with a little bit of the pasta water is supposed to help the
How
sauce thing for the pasta.
How long are you supposed to cook the pasta again?
How long? It should be about 10 minutes. It's a
I got a 10.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course, yours might be done before mine gets started. We'll see. I can tell it's working over here. Let me check on it.
Don't forget to save your pasta water.
And don't forget to save some water.
I always forget that stuff.
All right, I think we're getting close, luckily. I can't keep you guys here all day on Zoom. Although I would love to spend more time with you over Zoom. Is anyone's pasta already done? Oh, we got a thumbs up. Dad's like, we're ready. I've used this before.
Brian, do a smaller pan. She's the expert.
We don't know exactly what's going on with pan today. I use this for I'm just gonna be patient. Sometimes patience is helpful in cooking. What else can we work on while my pasta water is still working here? How are your onions looking? Are they starting to sizzle? You can kind of like let them chill for a little bit and then, kind of move them around every once in a while.
My pasta's looking great.
Pasta's looking great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, today we only gave you like about a half bag of pasta, but if you look in your recipe, oh, that's exactly what I can talk about right now while my onions are stagnant, not cooking. Let me just say this. We
We'll
are
improvise.
we are going to improvise. Yeah, so we are going to talk a little bit about this recipe we're using. And it's in your main cookbook, Dynamite Kids Cooking School. Have you guys liked this cookbook? Has anyone cooked any other recipes from it that we haven't done together? No? So this recipe is on page 70. And it does actually utilize butternut squash. So, it says butternut squash or other hard winter squash. So that's the recipe that we based it on today. And we basically, just kind of put it in half today. So we're doing half the recipe, with maybe a little bit a few other modifications. But that's where you can find the full recipe if you want to make a larger serving for like 6 to 8 people. And also talks you through how to cut the squash. And it's kind of part of the roasted section of the book since you're using roasted squash. And here's some sizzling starting. Just took a little bit longer than it normally does. That's a good sign though. Your onions may be more caramelized than mine are, but that's okay. Are there any other recipes that you guys have found in this book that you think we should cook together?
Mostly the desserts because I want to make desserts.
Yeah. Did you have one in here particularly? There is, what's hard about desserts is that I think we would have to do some of it in the class. And the hard part about it is that then it has to go in the oven, and unfortunately we can't taste it together. And I really enjoy that. But even this banana bread with brown sugar glaze sounds pretty good after this very savory squash. I'm trying to think of what else in here as a dessert has really stuck out. There's obviously, what I like about this book is that there is some more, I would say, complex flavors like an olive oil orange cake. And as we get into the fall, there's this rustic fruit galette. So you can use different fruit to make kind of an easier version of a pie.
I think Cora has something to say.
Did you have a question?
We should make bubble tea.
Bubble tea. Yeah, I've never made anything like that. You must be a bubble tea fan. Do you have a favorite shop in town?
Bubble tea talk.
Bubble tea top. I have not been there, but I know there's a few.
I like Bobochinos better.
Who knows? Yeah. I heard some bad news that Bobochinos, I think, is closing.
What?
I'm sorry to relay that news to you. I try to keep hip with all the restaurant opens and new openings and closures. So I think if you like it, you might have to go today. But hopefully you'll also find a new special boba shop. I like hearing the recommendations from you guys. Do you have a favorite place to eat pasta in town? Ooh, my pasta water is ready finally, guys.
Fazoli's.
Fazoli's. I've never been to Fazoli's.
The breadsticks are amazing.
Also Fazoli's.
All right, my pasta's going.
Olive Garden.
Fazoli's.
What did you say?
Also Fazoli's.
Also Fazoli's. We got 2 votes for Fazoli's today. All right, the pasta's going. We're gonna have some limited time to make the rest of the pasta. But I'm gonna keep checking on mine. And we're gonna try to stick to this hour the best we can. Mostly, I think you guys could have finished in an hour. I don't know. My onions are finally working in here. How is it smelling in those kitchens? There's like not many better smells than just caramelized onions, are there? You got thumbs up.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right. I'm gonna have to wait to add. I know the next step is gonna be to add the sage. So if yours is already far along, you can kind of either take it off the heat for a second and wait for me, or you can kind of move on to some of the next steps. But I'd love it.
My pasta is ready.
Your pasta is ready? Great. So before you drain it, did you take out some water?
Yes, I took out a cup.
Awesome. So yeah, you're ready. Mine was just delayed, so the jokes about watching water boil, or not really.
Beside all. Did you add the onions?
What'd you say?
Did you add anything to the onions?
All I added was just a little bit of salt.
You
So you can just salt them a little bit.
You did that.
Always good. You kind of always add salt throughout the cooking process. You usually typically add salt to like almost every ingredient. Salt is, a really important, I would say that's like the #1 seasoning. And kind of like the level of salt is always what makes it taste the best. So you kind of have to find the right salt level for, each dish and each ingredient. I'm happy to see mine browning a little bit. I got my heat up pretty high, so I can catch up to y'all. Alrighty. I'm kind of in a little holding point. I'm gonna check on my pasta really quick. Maybe I'll just put the lid back on. Trying to watch my time here and make sure we can get to these breadcrumbs. That is one thing that if you guys already have another burner ready, you could also work on before we're done. And really simply, and I might show that if I have time, but if you also have to, get out of the kitchen right at noon, you can do this before on another burner, I would say. And all that requires, which I'll still be doing it after, but all that requires is for you to have another spot where you add the rest of your oil. So the other 2 tablespoons, you'll add the garlic that we cut after that oil has been heated up. And you'll cook that garlic for a few minutes, or just like 1 or 2 minutes. Add the breadcrumbs that we also provided for you all. And then kind of just wait and kind of mix that around on medium heat until you see the breadcrumbs start to brown a little bit. And then you'll add the spices from the little packet that we gave you. And they're just some Italian spices just to make those zesty breadcrumbs. So that is something you can do. I'm a little bit limited on my burners here and they're working slow, but that's an easy step you can do so that your breadcrumbs are done before your pasta is done. I was going to do it right at the end, but you have the little spot right at the bottom of your recipe called zesty breadcrumbs. And, if you have someone around that can help you with that next, kind of that topping, that would be another thing to start on. So if you have any questions, if you want to work toward that, just ask me. Because I've made those zesty breadcrumbs a lot. I feel like it takes like a good recipe into like an awesome recipe with just like a little bit of topping and a little extra garlicky breadcrumb. And you can use that kind of those zesty breadcrumbs on all different types of pasta. Is anyone going to move forward and try that out? Get that going? They're cooking. They're busy.
They're all at their stoves.
Is the kale gonna go in with the onions?
Is the what?
Does the kale go in with the onions?
The kale going then.
Yeah, so kind of the next steps for the onions, if you feel like yours are caramelized, are going to be to add the sage, and then you actually add the squash in, as well as the greens. I'd kind of mix that all up first, and then you're going to add a little bit of the pasta water and like let that reduce down for a minute or 2. So yeah, everything's going to start to get combined. Usually I'm doing this right along with you, and I think I just need a few more minutes.
Adeline has hand raised. You can unmute yourself, Adeline.
What's the next step for the onions?
So yeah, I wish I could see what your onions are looking like. You do want them to get pretty, to have some color. You want to start to see them brown a little bit.
They're like a golden brown color.
Perfect. And have they started to kind of like break down a little bit? Are they a little bit more pliable? Does that make sense? Yeah, okay.
Mine is almost done.
Your whole,
No, your onions.
My onions.
okay, sounds good. I hope mine are almost done too. Yeah, like I said, the next steps are gonna be to start combining stuff. So, first, if your onions are, like I said, I'm gonna be there in a few minutes, but if your onions are set, you can add your sage in. So that's those leaves that we cut into smaller pieces. I'm gonna get mine on my cutting board and just ready to pop in.
The spices smell really good.
Yeah, I'm sure those are a lot of spices you're familiar with. There's some oregano and thyme. It's a kind of a blend of it's an Italian seasoning, so it has all different dried herbs. I'm still trying not to mess with my onions too much, but I'm just hoping that
Mine,
faster.
the seasoning really does smell good.
It does. Yeah, you can use that same seasoning, similar seasoning for probably a lot of different types of pasta. Today I love that we're using fresh herbs and dried herbs. I think that just makes it kind of just turns it up a notch.
Do the spices go in the breadcrumbs?
Yes. So yeah, that's what brings in the zesty part. So yeah, if anyone's working on the breadcrumbs, like I said, you'll just add the rest of your olive oil to the pan over medium heat. You're gonna add the garlic to the oil because then the garlic will start to infuse the oil and make it kind of a garlicky olive oil. And then you'll add the breadcrumbs and kind of just toast them over the heat until they're just slightly browned. And then add the Italian seasoning. And you can add the whole amount or a little bit. Just kind of depends how full of flavor you like it.
What do we do to the onions after the sage?
So then you can add the squash. I'm trying to get there with you guys, so I might just do that. It's okay if my onion's not as caramelized as yours, but it'll be a little different in flavor if it's not a little bit more caramelized. I think the pasta water is also going to help it break down a little bit. But I think my pasta's almost done. I know you guys you're beating me on this one. I'm gonna taste one piece. So I usually just take that out with a spoon, get it on my cutting board for a second. Maybe let it rest for a second as I test my pasta. My onions are starting to get some color. Sometimes if you have an electric stove, it's kind of hard to figure out how hot things are. I'm still getting used to that.
Can we add the breadcrumbs?
Yeah, if you've got them working, if you got your oil working with the garlic, you can definitely add the breadcrumbs. That's an easy step that you can kind of do at any time. You can even make these breadcrumbs and keep them around for other dishes. So I think I'm almost ready to add my sage. I usually would cut down my onions a little bit more, but I'm trying to stick as close to time. I'm glad you guys joined me for our hour of fun. But sometimes things just take a little bit longer with cooking. You just never know. Everyone seems to be working on a little bit different part of the process. Do we have some sage that already went in the onions as well? Sage. Has anyone added their squash yet? And then the next thing you're going to add, if you're already there, is the kale. And I know in the recipe you kind of add the water right away, the pasta water. But for a second, I would kind of let the onions, the squash, and the kale hang out in your pan for a second. And I think think I'm gonna join you really quickly, just trying to get them a little bit browner. You know, usually this is called, you know, the browning is called like a Maillard reaction, and so that's just what this kind of browning is a result of. It's like the sugars that are caramelizing. So that's why they're called caramelized onions, not because they taste like caramel, but it's kind of the sugar breaking down and browning.
The water, as you remove it.
I think mine are in a pretty good spot. I think I'm ready to join you guys pretty quickly here. So the sage has hit, the onions.
My onions are really sizzling.
Yeah, mine too. Finally. You never really want to rush caramelized onions, but I was trying to show you guys a simple pasta though. I think that things are always more complex than I even can tell. We got some pasta water going in already, so I'm happy you guys are following along, just taking my instruction. I'm gonna try my pasta because my water's gonna overboil here. It wasn't quite done. Let's try another one. I can tell it's done. And I'm gonna have my assistant here, Kate. Well, first I'm gonna grab my pasta water. It would be bad if I'm the one that forgot that. And use a ladle. So yeah, you don't need to keep a lot of pasta water. It just kind of helps combine the ingredients. So I've had my sage in here for a minute. Gonna add my squash. It's gonna start smelling really good. How is it smelling? No one's been talking to me about the smell in their kitchens yet. They're all working.
They're busy.
Yeah, they're all busy. Got the squash going. I'm gonna try to kind of cut it with my spatula a little bit.
Adeline, you can ask your question.
I tried some of the breadcrumbs. It actually tastes really good.
Yeah, it's a little flavor boost. So you already finished your breadcrumbs or just plain breadcrumbs? Did you already
Cooking. I finished cooking them.
Awesome. You guys are doing great.
So can I add the water to the pasta water to the sauce now, since I've let the kale sit in there for a little bit?
Yeah, I'm also gonna do that. So yeah, I would just put a little bit, start with a little bit and see if your kale starts to wilt down. You don't need a lot, but it does just help bring that starch content up of your sauce. So I'm gonna get my kale going. Like I said, everything it tastes a little bit better to me when it's a little bit more brown.
We've also got another question from, I don't think they're unmuted.
Okay.
It smells good.
It smells good. We'll pause for those comments anytime. So yeah, I've got all my stuff going in here. I'm gonna let it sit for like just another minute before I.
There's a low battery flashing on your screen.
Oh,
Which I did.
So we will have to wrap it.
Does Ian have a question?
is there another question?
Do you think the breadcrumbs would be good on like pizza or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll probably be pretty good on anything. Yeah, any type of pasta, or like roasted vegetables, just to add once again like a little food.
Yeah.
Okay.
And pepper.
Yeah, I may not have much time to try the breadcrumbs today, so that's definitely a little step you may want.
Oh, turn the audio off.
All right, so If you guys, I know most of you are beyond me, so I'm gonna add this pasta water. You can kind of hear it all sizzle.
What do you add in the
That means my burner's working.
We don't
Yeah.
need that one.
I'm gonna cook that down a little bit. It's gonna help everything caramelize even more, and just kind of break down.
What do you guys think of this one?
Wait, I want to smell it. Smell like radish.
Yeah, I'm gonna let that hang out for a second. I'm gonna kind of get my large bowl ready, to take in my vegetables and my pasta. So I'm gonna fill up.
There's still a low battery flashing on your screen.
Thank you. We do have a backup just in case our video doesn't work for a second. We'll just pivot to another camera. So, oh, I see how they can see it and why they're so alarmed. Don't worry, we're monitoring it. I've got a whole crew here and we've got some options. So we won't get disconnected. I want to see how your pastas.
Ian, do you have a question?
I added salt and pepper to the breadcrumbs.
Yeah, I think that's always good to do. You can always add salt and pepper. I think I have that on the recipe. I just haven't gotten there yet. But yeah, of course, in addition to that Italian seasoning, you can add salt and pepper. So yeah, I'm letting my stuff cook down a little bit. Yes.
My breadcrumbs are done.
Your breadcrumbs are done great.
Slightly
My
overdone.
breadcrumbs may be done tomorrow. I'm not sure. But
Maybe slightly overdone.
It's
they're a little bit brown. As you know, as long as they're not black and they're just dark brown, that's okay. That just means they're going to be a little extra roasted, toasted and roasted. Has everyone else done breadcrumbs? Or are people still trying to wait for me? Oh no, everyone's working on them, so great. I might be able to get them going in this other pan. So I'm gonna get all this pasta in my bowl now that it's finally cooked.
okay.
You know, some people would just kind of combine this in the pan. You can do that as well. But this recipe just called for it specifically to do it in a large bowl and kind of mix it up within there.
I like the breadcrumbs. I like the breadcrumbs.
You like the breadcrumbs too? Yeah. Well, it looks like that's going to be a great way for you guys to kind of, you know, even if you make like a really simple butter pasta, you could probably just put those breadcrumbs on it and it would taste pretty good.
Adeline, do you have a question?
What do we do with the cheese?
So yeah, that's coming. So that's going to be like the final step to combine everything. So my vegetables are getting pretty close. You know, my onions, once again, are not as caramelized as I would normally do. I hope my taste testers are okay with that. They're cooked. They're just not as brown as I normally like. And we're going to get there. So if you are getting close, I'm going to try to get my breadcrumbs going. If your vegetables are already done or if you've already set them aside, you can go ahead and start building your pasta. And so the two cheeses we have for you today are Parmesan. And you're going to see that all kind of, we made sure to pack a lot in that one little container for you. That's the one that's in shreds. And you're also going to have goat cheese. Has anyone tried goat cheese before?
I think it tastes like cream cheese almost.
Yeah, it definitely has a little bit more of a sour flavor to it. And if you don't love the flavor just trying it, one, it's going to be mixed with a lot of other things. And two, you could always leave the cheese out and just try a little bit on top of the pasta later. So, you know, if you have like a family member that doesn't like goat cheese, you can always leave that out. But it is going to be the kind of the creamy element that helps everything combine together. So I think my veggies are pretty much ready. That pasta water helps kind of keep the vegetables very moist.
I want to eat this.
And I'm just gonna pour that all in.
Trash the lid. Trash the lid.
And then we are gonna put the cheeses in. So I think I used about an ounce. We'll use a few. I'm gonna maybe use this. Kind of a
I don't
rough
like-
amount. Got some negative reviews on some of the cheese. Let's see. Some people are, I think everyone's working on combining everything. So I'm trying to match your amount of cheese I gave you here. And I'm gonna put my goat cheese right in. I'm gonna use most of it. Some of these are big chunks, so we might have to try to break those up with our spoon. And with the warm vegetables, it should just all start to combine. Mine might have to wait for the breadcrumbs, so we might try it without the breadcrumbs, even though you guys have been raving about them like the whole time. So I'm just combining everything. My cheeses are starting to melt. I'm gonna take a second and add just some black pepper. If you have freshly ground pepper, that's even better. And some salt. So a little bit more salt. Like I said, you kind of want to salt at every stage of the recipe. Sometimes I take too much. I'm gonna keep combining this now that it has the salt and the pepper. My breadcrumbs are going to take a bit longer, so I don't think I'm going to fit that in the video today, but I'm glad that you guys were able to kind of navigate that yourselves. It is pretty straightforward, that part of the recipe. I'm still going to get mine going here with my garlic first. I'm doing that off screen for now, because most of you have already completed it. All right, so is anyone ready to taste with me today?
We are.
Okay. Let me check in. Is anyone still working? Need a minute or two more? This is getting very melty and what is smelling good. Some people are already tasting, so I'm already seeing some positive nods, which is always good.
It's delicious.
It's delicious. Awesome. Let me get someone to taste mine. I'll taste it with them. Like I said, they might be bummed because I don't have any breadcrumbs quite yet. But that's okay. The breadcrumbs are technically optional, but I think they make it extra special, and I'll just have to give some of my taste testers a little bit later. We got some parents coming in the room. Like, do we have good reactions, or are those
Look like they like it.
are the kids eating just as much as the parents? There's not a lot of talking going on.
There's a lot of eating.
Yeah. Maybe I'll Kate, come try it with me. Who else are we gonna have try? Erica?
Sure.
It's okay.
Okay.
I say
Alright.
that's a win.
I see that's a win. Awesome. I always like to know what the general reactions are and if we're on par there. All right, we're gonna try a little bit. Mmm. All right.
Thumbs up.
It's good. It's definitely a different cheesy flavor than probably
It tastes really good.
most of us are used to. It's, not as I don't know. These cheeses are definitely a little bit more unique than like the cheddar.
I like
Or-
the goat cheese.
We got like some thumbs up. So what do we think? We got thumbs up, we got a maybe, and we got a down. Not your favorite. We got a maybe. What do we think, parents? We got thumbs up. Awesome. Cool. So like I said, you can kind of use this recipe and swap out different greens, swap out different winter squash. I really
It's
appreciate
really
that.
good.
My
Join me.
said likes it.
I think ours would be even better with some breadcrumbs. So I hope that I get to try those next. And I really appreciate you guys joining me today. I look forward to joining you next month, and maybe we'll do. I think I promised a sweet one this time, and it didn't happen. So we'll work on some desserts because that was another request today. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.